The fact that I'm reviewing all of the MCU movies out of excitement for the upcoming 4th Avengers movie should give away that I'm a big fan of this franchise. It isn't my favorite movie series, but I've already mentioned a fond memory I have for just the TV commercial of Iron Man, and that I've seen every movie in theaters from Thor onward. That probably makes it seem like I was a fan of the series starting with the Thor movie. Well, that's not really the case. I saw Thor because I liked the comic book character Thor. Iron Man 3 is the first movie I saw just because I liked the MCU. Captain America, the first Avenger, was a very different experience. Non-American superhero fans often say that one reason they can't get into Captain America is because he's so deeply ingrained in the country of the USA. He wears a ridiculous costume based on the American flag, and if you only knew the character's name and appearance, it would seem that he's motivated by a desire to protect America out of pure patriotism. It's easy to see why someone outside of the USA wouldn't be interested in their perception of the character, but what I think a lot of non-Americans don't realize is that's how we all felt about him too. I hadn't read any Captain America comics that didn't involve Spider-Man and the Great Gargoyle prior to seeing this movie. When I saw his costume in the commercials, my friends and I laughed out loud at how stupid it looked. We went to see the movie half just so we'd know what was going on in the Avengers and half to laugh at what we expected to be a corny movie. But sometimes movies can surprise you and turn out better than you expect. I expected to hate Wonder Woman and ended up really liking it. I expected the Lego movie to be aimed only at audiences way younger than me and ended up getting more out of it than I would have if I was in the target demographic. And I expected to laugh at Captain America, the first Avenger, but ended up becoming a fan. So how did they do it? I mean, getting a director who had already proved he can make an enjoyable pulpy period superhero movie is probably the biggest reason, but what are the details? What's the mixture of ingredients that not only turned me around on the idea of a 40s set USA-themed superhero movie, but turned around some others in countries all over the world? Well, as with any narrative-driven movie, the story's a big part. Here's how it goes. Steve Rogers is a small, sickly, but good-natured young man who desperately wants to join the US military so that he can help win World War II and stop the atrocities being committed by the Nazis. One German scientist offers him the chance to undergo a dangerous experimental procedure to give him superpowers. The procedure is a success, and Steve heads on over to Europe to fight Nazis, specifically a division of Nazis called Hydra led by Johann Schmidt, who underwent a super soldier serum experiment like Steve's that also gave him powers, but made him look really gross. So Captain America, the super soldier, and Red Skull, the gross super soldier, fight with the fate of the World War in the balance. The movie's greatest strength is the characterization of Steve Rogers. The movie's clear that he's just the sort of guy who's kind to everyone except for people who are unkind. He has no cowardly impulses and genuinely seems to believe that every person has a moral obligation to do the most good that they're able to, though he never judges anyone for not doing as much as he does or anything like that. As his best friend Bucky points out, however, succeeding at entering the military like his father would be a personal victory for Steve. How can you not like a guy when all he wants to be is able to do more good things for more people? The movie even has a musical number parodying the perception that Captain America is motivated by a notion that the USA is the best country ever or something like that.
Series E defense bonds. Each one you buy is a bullet in the barrel of your best guy's gun.
In fact, Captain America's first heroic act after he receives his name is when he disobeys the military and saves people on his own. Not quite as awesome as the comics, where he punched Hitler in the face before America even entered World War II, but still pretty rad. Chris Evans was a controversial casting choice because he was known for less serious roles and roles in not-so-great Marvel superhero movies up to that point, but for the zillionth time, casting directors proved they usually know better than us dorks, since Evans is great.
And you can't see your eyebrows. And I tell you what, you really need your eyebrows, because you could be making this face and you put the cat and you just look like you're doing this. You just look so neutral. You have to like kind of get angry with the actual shape of your eyeballs.
I'm sure that after Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Don Cheadle, Chris Evans, and Mark Ruffalo, no casting decision in the MCU will ever be controversial again, right? Right? Anyway, remember how I said I laughed at the costume when I saw it in a commercial? Well, like casting choices, costume design is something nerds like me tend to have very strong opinions about before we actually see the movie the costumes are being revealed in. We speculate on which costume will be the final version, whether the changes from the source material have any practical purposes, and of course we rant and rave about how bad we think some of them are. I did that right up until I rewatched this movie for this review, which reminded me of my experience watching this movie for the first time. There's a number of reasons our first impressions about costumes are often wrong, and it goes way beyond the fact fact that set photos don't reflect how the actors and costumes they wear will be posed, shot, lit, or edited in post-production by VFX artists and digital colorists. The context of the story and the context of the tone of the movie also play a big role. Yes, Captain America's suit is bright blue, but it's in a campy pulp superhero movie with laser Nazis, giant tanks, crazy flying vehicles, and high adventure. It kinda fits. And lo and behold, when the movies got darker and more serious in the second Captain America movie, so did his costume. Costume designer Anna B. Shepard also brilliantly altered the elements of the costume into seemingly practical articles of clothing. The scale mail armor is turned into a diamond pattern resembling a more modern style of body armor, the mask is a helmet, the stripes are straps holding the pieces of the suit together. It just looks great. In fact, it's my favorite version of Captain America's costume, out of not just the MCU, but all the cartoons, video games, and comics as well. The best part is that the star in the back is actually a magnet that holds his shield together so that he doesn't have to wear it like a backpack. And to top things off, the movie makes a point to show you what a real bad Captain America costume would look like. I should probably move on to another topic now, the supporting cast. Sebastian Stan doesn't get enough to do as Bucky. If we were more invested in him, non-comic readers would have remembered who he was in Winter Soldier instead of just being confused at his reveal scene.
Bucky? Who the hell is Bucky?
I think a simple way to do this would have been to have him be present for the final battle, maybe in place of Tommy Lee Jones's military Colonel Chester Phillips, who is really only there to be a one-liner machine. Although, unlike some one-liner machines, everything Colonel Phillips says is actually really funny.
Get your ass up out of that dirt and stand in that line at attention until somebody comes tells you what to do.
Haley Atwell is Peggy Carter, a secret agent so awesome that 10 years into the MCU, she is still the only character to have gotten her own spin-off. Doesn't count. Agent Coulson is a co-lead in that show. Doesn't count either. They were getting their own movies no matter what. Agent Carter got a spin-off because Haley Atwell made an impression as a tough-as-nails soldier and agent that made people want to see more. Not just one movie, but 18 episodes of a TV show, some guest spots on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a short film, and even a scene in both Winter Soldier and The Avengers 2. That's right, Peggy Carter got to appear in an Avengers movie before the War Machine armor. Sorry, Rhodey, but she's the real ascended sidekick here. Black Mirror may be the best thing Haley Atwell has been involved in, but Agent Peggy Carter is her best character. But let's talk about this film's villains, starting with Toby Jones as Dr. Arnim Zola, a Nazi mad scientist. Jones is one of my favorite actors, and he's great as a wimpy scientist whose purpose in the movie is really just to emphasize how frightful the real villain is. Still, Jones does get the best villain line in the movie.
What's his target?
His target is everywhere.
Hugo Weaving plays the Red Skull, who, like Ironmonger, Abomination, and Whiplash before him, isn't the most complex villain, but come on, he's a Nazi. Not only is he a Nazi, the other Nazis kicked him out of the Nazis for being too evil. If he were anything other than a black leather-clad, constantly scowling blowhard who fails at everything but always blames somebody else, it just wouldn't be the same. People speculated for years that he would return, and I'm very glad that he did, even if Weaving didn't reprise the role. A few quick nods to the wider supporting cast in this movie. Dominic Cooper's a natural Howard Stark, you have no doubts that this guy is Tony's dad. Richard Armitage plays Heinz Kruger, pretty much the Joe Chill / Uncle Ben shooting burglar of the Captain America mythos. Stanley Tucci, who's an actor I put on the MCU should have used them more shelf beside Tim Blake Nelson. And Neil McDonough, Kenneth Choi, and Natalie Dormer all have very minor but well-played roles. The action in the movie is good, but suffers from the same problem Iron Man 1 does, in that the pace of superhero action has generally increased a lot since, so everything looks kind of slow now. Still, we get a motorcycle chase straight out of a James Bond movie, where Steve keeps using gadgets to stop his pursuers, followed by the obligatory fight with a bunch of regular guys to show how strong he is, and a few big battles and montages to fill up the destruction quota. The scene where Captain America realizes he has powers is also pretty good as far as that type of scene goes. The true standout here is the finale, which is the only action scene I think holds up to today's standards in the movie. Captain America fights his way across a runway, a scene they basically reuse in Winter Soldier by the way, jumps onto a moving plane, fights some Nazis inside, fights on the outside of a smaller plane, we get some PG-13 gore, he crashes the plane back into the bigger plane, then has a one-on-one fight with the villain even as the plane starts to nosedive and they end up on the walls and ceiling. It's not the most well choreographed or brutal fight in the series, but it keeps changing things up and never gets boring. Now the movie isn't perfect. When I first saw it, I was a bit upset that most of the coolest action moments shown in the trailers are just briefly glimpsed in a montage sequence instead of being pieces of full scenes. Montages of course can advance the story, and this one shows how Cap is doing now that he's a superhero, but whenever movies do this and all the shots end up in a trailer that makes them look like different scenes, I just get the sense that filmmakers wanted to advertise some cool imagery they thought of without doing the work of fitting it into the story. This can also apply to flashbacks and dream sequences, by the way. I'm looking at you, Age of Ultron. Oh, I'll get to you. I also don't think the opening of the movie is necessary. Seeing Captain America frozen in the ice device in the present does make me interested in what's going on, but it's only important in the bonus scene, which is after the movie's already over, and I think Red Skull stealing the MacGuffin is at least equally effective as a hook. The biggest flaw with the movie isn't really the movie's fault, but since it's an origin story superhero movie, the basic plot outline is very similar to lots of other movies. Iron Man, Batman Begins, that sort of movie. And like Iron Man 1, the fights may seem oddly slow-paced considering how fast Captain America moves in the sequels. Ultimately, Captain America the First Avenger is not a great movie, but it was a whole lot better than I thought it would be. While I prefer the two sequels, this is still where I recommend anyone start if they don't understand why Captain America has any fans. And if by chance you're related to some kids under 13 whose parents are careful about what they watch, this PG-13 movie, and really Thor 1 now that I think about it, are pretty much harmless, aside from some brief bloody violence, and I think these two will keep a kid's attention better than the first two Iron Man movies or The Incredible Hulk. So while Iron Man is seen as the best pre-Avengers Phase 1 movie by most fans, I have to disagree and vote for Captain America in that regard. Worth a look for fans of superhero movies that are neither serious like Captain America 2, nor self-parody like Thor Ragnarok.
How'd you feel?
I told her.
Stuck in America. Stuck in America. Stuck in America. Stuck in America.
This bonus scene isn't really a scene, it's a teaser trailer for the Avengers. It's obviously barely worth watching now that we've all seen the Avengers and know everything that happens in it, but at the time it generated some serious hype. Oh crap, I get to review the Avengers next. Yes!
You here with a mission, sir?
I am
Trying to get me back in the world?
trying to save it. And there came a day